Taman stood in the massive hall of the Galactic Hunting Guild, and he felt small. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Around him, creatures from 100 different worlds walked past. Some had scales that shimmered like metal. Others had 4 arms or 6 legs. A few floated in the air without touching the ground at all. He was just a human. Average height, average build. No special armor, no cybernetic enhancements. Just flesh and bone and determination. The written exam had been easy. Taman knew about tracking, about reading signs in the wilderness, about survival tactics. He had scored higher than almost everyone else. But now came the physical trials, and his stomach twisted with worry. Next candidate. A voice boomed across the testing arena. Taman walked forward. The testing officer was a Drashkor, a species that looked like a cross between a lizard and a mountain. His scales were dark green and his eyes were the color of hot coals. He looked down at Taman and snorted. Another human, the Drashkor said. His name badge read Vorth, Guildmaster. He tapped something on his datapad. Let's get this over with. The first test was strength. Taman had to lift a weight bar. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled with everything he had. The bar moved, but barely. Around him, other candidates lifted similar weights over their heads with ease. A 4-armed Quilvan lifted his bar with just 2 arms, laughing as he did it. Taman managed to lift his bar to chest height. That was all. The second test was speed. Taman ran as fast as he could across the arena. His lungs burned. His legs pumped. He crossed the finish line and looked at his time. It was slow. Much slower than the reptilian runners who seemed to fly across the ground. Much slower than the insect-like creatures who barely touched the floor as they moved. The third test was durability. Candidates had to withstand strikes from a training dummy that hit with controlled force. Taman took 3 hits before he had to stop, his ribs aching. The Quilvan beside him took 20 hits and asked for more. When the tests ended, Vorth called all the candidates together. He read names from his datapad. One by one, candidates stepped forward to receive their guild badges. These badges meant they could take hunting contracts. They could earn money and respect across the galaxy. Taman waited. His name didn't come. Finally, only 3 candidates remained without badges. Taman was one of them. The rest of you failed, Vorth said flatly. He looked directly at Taman. Humans are too fragile for this work. Your bones break like glass. Your skin tears like paper. This is no place for soft skins. Go home. The words hit Taman harder than the training dummy had. He wanted to argue, to protest, but what could he say? The numbers didn't lie. He had been the weakest in every test. He walked out of the guild hall with his head down. Behind him, he heard laughter. He heard voices mocking him. Did you see that human trying to lift the bar? Someone said. I thought he was going to pass out. Humans don't belong here, another voice agreed. They should stick to their safe little worlds. Taman kept walking. He made his way to the station's cantina, a place where off-duty hunters drank and told stories. He sat at the bar and ordered water. He couldn't afford anything else. Rough day? A voice asked beside him. Taman looked up. A human woman stood there about his age with oil stains on her jumpsuit and a friendly smile. Her name tag said Jiwoo, ship mechanic. You could say that, Taman replied. Let me guess. Guild trials? Jiwoo sat down next to him without waiting for an invitation. Failed the physical tests? How did you know? Because I see it happen to every human who tries, Jiwoo said. She ordered a drink for herself. The guild doesn't understand humans. They test for the wrong things. What do you mean? They test for strength and speed. They test for things that look impressive, but they don't test for the things that matter. Jiwoo leaned closer. Tell me something. Have you ever heard of Kael'vros the Eternal? Taman had. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of Kael'vros. He was a legend, a ghost story, a nightmare for prey across 1,000 worlds. No one knew what species he was. He always wore full armor, head to toe. He took the contracts that no one else would touch. And he always came back alive. What about him? Taman asked. People say he's been hunting for 40 years, Jiwoo said. 40 years and he's never failed a contract. Never. She took a sip of her drink. You know what I think? I think the strongest hunters don't always look the strongest. Before Taman could ask what she meant, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Everyone in the cantina looked up. An announcement came over the speakers. Emergency distress beacon activated. Location, Carvos Prime. Research team requires immediate extraction. 7 personnel trapped. The cantina went quiet. Taman heard someone whisper, Carvos Prime. That's a death world. No one survives Carvos Prime, another voice said. Jiwoo's face went pale. My cousin is on that research team, she said quietly. Dr. Hee-jin, she's a xenobiologist. Taman watched as hunters in the cantina looked at each other and shook their heads. No one volunteered. No one even stood up. The announcement came again. Guild requests volunteers for rescue mission to Carvos Prime. Hazard pay offered. Repeat, volunteers needed. Still, no one moved. Vorath's voice came over the speakers next. The guild has evaluated the situation. Carvos Prime is too dangerous. We will not send a team. The contract is denied. Jiwoo's hands clenched into fists. Tears formed in her eyes. They're just going to leave them there to die. Taemin made a decision in that moment. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was suicidal. But he had traveled across the galaxy to become a hunter. He had trained for years. He had dreamed of this life since he was a child. And now people needed help. People were going to die if no one acted. The guild said he was too weak. Fine, let them say it. He stood up from his seat. Where are you going? Jiwoo asked. I need to borrow a ship, Taemin said. Jiwoo stared at him. You can't be serious. You'll die. Maybe, Taemin admitted, but at least I'll die trying. That's more than anyone else here can say. 8 hours later, Taemin sat in the pilot's seat of a small cargo ship he had borrowed from the station's docking bay. He had left a note for Jiwoo apologizing for stealing the ship and promising to bring it back. He had loaded supplies, water, rations, a basic medical kit, and a simple plasma rifle. As he entered the coordinates for Carvos Prime, his hand shook slightly. He knew what he was doing was crazy, but he also knew that if he didn't try, he would never forgive himself. The ship's engines hummed to life. Taemin took a deep breath and pushed the throttle forward. He was going to a death world. Alone. Unarmed except for one rifle. Untrained by guild standards, but he was going. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The ship shook violently as it entered Carvos Prime's atmosphere. Taemin gripped the controls, his knuckles white. Warning lights flashed across every panel. The planet's gravity was pulling him down harder than he expected. Come on, he muttered to the ship. Just a little longer. The ship didn't listen. One engine died, then another. Taemin was falling now, not flying. He could see the jungle below, a thick mass of green and black that stretched to the horizon. He aimed for what looked like a clearing and prayed. The impact threw him against his restraints. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Then everything went still. Taemin hung upside down in his seat, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He unbuckled himself and fell to what was now the ceiling. Every part of his body hurt. But he was alive. He grabbed his rifle and supply pack and crawled out through a broken window. The moment he stepped outside, the heat hit him like a wall. The air was thick and humid, almost too heavy to breathe. Rain fell from the dark clouds above, but when drops touched his skin, they burned slightly. Acid rain. This was Carvos Prime. A death world. The guild had been right about one thing. This place wanted to kill him. Taemin pulled out his scanner and checked for the research team's signal. There, about 15 kilometers to the north. He started walking. The jungle was worse than he imagined. The plants had thorns that dripped poison. Insects the size of his fist buzzed through the air, their stingers long enough to pierce his clothes. The ground was soft and muddy, and every step felt like he was being pulled down. But Taemin noticed something strange. The gravity here was heavier than Earth's. It made every movement harder, and the air had a slightly toxic quality that would burn most alien lungs. But his human lungs, evolved to breathe Earth's ancient varied atmospheres, could handle it. The thick air didn't bother him as much as it would bother a Drashkor or a Quillman, maybe being human. Wasn't such a disadvantage here. He walked for 3 hours before he saw his first shadow worm. The creature was massive, easily 6 meters long. It had 6 legs, each ending in claws that looked like they could cut through steel. Its skin changed colors, matching the jungle around it. Taemin only saw it because it moved. The worm's head turned toward him. Its eyes were pure black, like holes in reality. It opened its mouth, showing rows of teeth, and hissed. Taemin didn't think. He dove behind a large tree just as the worm lunged. The creature's claws raked the bark where he had been standing. Taman rolled, came up running, and didn't look back. He could hear the worm chasing him. Its feet thudded against the ground. Its breath came in sharp, angry bursts. Taman ran faster than he thought possible, jumping over roots, ducking under branches. Then he remembered something from his training. Predators expect prey to run in a straight line. He cut sharply to the left, then to the right, zigzagging through the jungle. The worm, moving fast, couldn't turn as quickly. It slammed into a tree, and Taman heard it shriek in frustration. He kept running until he couldn't hear it anymore. Then he collapsed against a rock, gasping for air. His heart pounded. His legs shook. But he was alive. He had learned something important. These worms were fast but not agile. They were strong but not smart. He could use that. Taman continued north. He moved more carefully now, checking every shadow, every movement. He used his scanner to avoid areas where multiple life signs gathered. Hours passed. The jungle never got lighter. Dark clouds covered the sky constantly. Finally, as night fell, he found them. The research bunker was half collapsed, surrounded by deep claw marks in the metal walls. Taman could see lights inside, flickering and weak. He approached carefully, watching for worms. "Hello?" he called out softly. "Dr. Heejin? Is anyone there?" A panel in the bunker wall slid open. A rifle barrel pointed at him. "Who are you?" A voice demanded. "My name is Taman. I came from Station Velkara. Jiwoo sent me." There was silence. Then the panel opened wider and a woman's face appeared. She was human, with tired eyes and dirt on her face. "Jiwoo is my cousin. How is she?" "Worried about you," Taman said. "Can I come in?" The door opened. Taman stepped inside quickly and the door sealed behind him. The bunker was small and cramped. 3 people were inside. Dr. Hyejin, the woman who had let him in. A human man named Sang-woo, who looked like an engineer based on his tools. And a Quilvan scientist named Thex, who stared at Taman with all 4 arms crossed. "You're the rescue team?" Thex asked. His voice dripped with disbelief. "One human with a basic rifle?" "The guild refused to send anyone," Taman said. "So yes." "I'm all you've got. We're dead," Thex muttered. "We're all dead." "Stop it," Hyejin snapped. She turned to Taman. "Thank you for coming." Even if she didn't finish the sentence. "What's the situation?" Taman asked. Sang-woo explained. They had been studying the planet's ecosystem when the shadow worms attacked. Their ship was destroyed. Their long-range communicator was damaged. They had been trapped here for 6 days, running out of food and water. The worms circled the bunker constantly, waiting. "How many worms?" Taman asked. "At least 15, Eugene said. "Maybe more." "They hunt in packs." Taman's heart sank. 1 worm had almost killed him. 15 was impossible. As if summoned by their conversation, something slammed into the bunker door. Then again. The worms were testing the defenses. "They do this every few hours," Sang-woo said. "The door won't last much longer." Taman looked around the bunker. There had to be a way out. There had to be something he could do. That's when he heard it. A sound outside, different from the worms. It was quieter, more controlled. He moved to a small window and looked out. In the darkness, he saw a figure. It was humanoid, wearing full armor that seemed to absorb light. The figure moved with perfect silence, like a shadow among shadows. As Taman watched, the figure approached one of the worms from behind. The worm never knew what hit it. The armored figure's blade cut through the creature's neck in one smooth motion. The worm fell silently. The figure moved to the next one. "Who is that?" Sang-woo whispered, looking over Taman's shoulder. "I don't know," Taman breathed. The figure killed 3 more worms in the span of a minute. The movements were efficient, brutal, and perfectly timed. This wasn't someone fighting. This was someone hunting. Then, as quickly as they appeared, the figure stopped. They looked directly at the bunker window, right at Taman. Even through the armor, Taman felt the weight of that gaze. The figure nodded once, then vanished into the jungle. "Was that—" Hyejin's voice was barely a whisper. "Was that Kael'vros?" The name hung in the air like a spell. Kael'vros the Eternal, the greatest hunter in the galaxy. The ghost. The legend. Taman looked at the dead worms outside. 4 creatures that would have killed him easily, dead in seconds. If that was Kael'vros, then maybe they had a chance after all. But the question remained. Why was the galaxy's most feared hunter here? On a death world in the middle of nowhere? And more importantly, was he friend or foe? The bunker shook again as more worms attacked the door. The metal was bending now. They had maybe a day before it gave way completely. Taemin looked at the survivors. They were tired, scared, and running out of hope. "I need to fix my ship," Taemin said. "It crashed about 15 kilometers south of here. If I can get it flying, we can all leave." "You'll never make it through the worms," Thex said. "Maybe not," Taemin admitted. "But sitting here waiting to die isn't a plan either." Yijin put a hand on his shoulder. "If you're going out there, you need to understand something. The worms aren't the apex predators on this world. There's something bigger, something they call the Queen. She controls the pack. Where is she? We don't know. But if you run into her, run the other way. Don't fight. Just run," Taemin nodded. He checked his rifle, filled his pack with what little supplies they could spare, and prepared to head back into the jungle. As he stood at the door, "Ready to leave," Sangwoo said quietly. "Good luck." Taemin didn't answer. He stepped out into the darkness and started running. Taemin didn't make it 500 meters before the worms found him. He heard them first, that distinctive sound of 6 legs moving through the jungle. Then he saw them. 3 shadow worms emerging from different directions. They had surrounded him. Running away wouldn't work. Fighting was suicide. So Taemin did the only thing he could think of. He ran toward them, screaming at the top of his lungs. The worms, surprised by prey that charged instead of fled, hesitated for just a second. That second was enough. Taemin dove between 2 of them, rolling under their bellies and coming up on the other side. Then he ran. The worms shrieked and chased after him. But now they were behind him, not surrounding him. It was a small advantage, but it was something. Taemin ran through the jungle, his legs pumping, his lungs burning. He jumped over roots and ducked under branches. Behind him, the worms crashed through the vegetation, their heavy bodies breaking everything in their path. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The worms were still chasing. But Taemin noticed something. They were slowing down. Not a lot, but enough. Their breathing was getting heavier. Their movements were getting sloppier. He understood then. The worms were built for speed, for quick bursts of power to catch prey. But humans were different. Humans were built to run for hours, for days if needed. It was how ancient humans hunted on Earth, running after animals until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Taemin wasn't trying to outrun the worms. He was trying to outlast them. He kept running. 2 hours. 3 hours. His legs screamed in pain. His throat was raw. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with the acid rain. But he kept moving, kept putting 1 foot in front of the other. Behind him, one of the worms gave up, slowing to a stop. 2 worms left, 4 hours. His vision blurred. He felt dizzy. His body was reaching its limit. But the worms were reaching theirs too. He could hear them struggling, their breath coming in ragged gasps. 5 hours. Taemin stumbled, nearly fell, caught himself on a tree. He wanted to stop. Every cell in his body begged him to stop. Just for a minute. Just to rest. But if he stopped, he would die. He pushed off the tree and kept running. That's when the armored figure appeared beside him. Taemin's exhausted brain barely registered it at first. One moment he was alone. The next moment someone was running next to him, matching his pace perfectly. The figure tossed something to him. Taemin caught it reflexively. A hydration pack. "Drink," a voice said from inside the helmet. The voice was processed, distorted. "And use this." Another object came flying. Taemin caught it. A stim injector. He had seen these before. Medical devices that gave a burst of energy to tired muscles. They were dangerous if overused, but right now Taemin didn't care. He pressed it against his neck and felt chemicals flood his system. The exhaustion didn't disappear, but it became manageable. His vision cleared. His legs found new strength. "Who are you?" Taemin gasped as he ran. "Keep running," the figure said. Questions later. They ran together through the night. Whenever a worm got too close, the armored figure would fall back, and Taemin would hear sounds of brief combat. Then the figure would catch up again and they would keep running. Taemin studied his companion as they moved. The armor was unlike anything he had seen before. It didn't reflect light, it seemed to drink it in, making the wearer hard to see even when they were right next to him. The weapons were simple but effective. A blade, a small firearm, nothing fancy. But it was the way the figure moved that caught Taemin's attention. The rhythm, the breathing pattern. It was familiar. It was human. The realization hit Taemin like a physical blow. The greatest hunter in the galaxy, the legendary Kelvros, was human. "You're human," Taman said. It wasn't a question. The figure didn't respond for a long moment. Then quietly, yes. Why hide it? Because the galaxy fears what it doesn't understand. And I needed them to fear me more than they despised humans. They ran in silence after that. Dawn broke, painting the jungle in shades of gray and green. Taman had been running for 6 hours now. His body was beyond pain. It was numb, moving on autopilot and willpower alone. Finally, blessedly, the worms stopped chasing. Taman looked back and saw them standing at the edge of a clearing, watching but not pursuing. They had given up. Taman slowed to a walk, then stopped completely. He bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. He had done it. He had outrun shadow worms. Him, the human the guild had called too weak. Not bad, the armored figure said. They had stopped at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the jungle. 6 hours. Most species would have died in one. Most species don't have millions of years of persistence hunting in their evolution, Taman said between breaths. The figure turned to look at him. Even through the helmet, Taman felt approval in that gaze. "You understand," the figure said. "Good. That will help you survive what comes next." "What comes next?" The figure reached up and unsealed their helmet. The faceplate lifted, revealing the face beneath. Taman stared. The man before him was human, maybe in his 50s or 60s, with Korean features. His hair was black with streaks of silver. Scars crossed his face, telling stories of 1,000 hunts. His eyes were dark and intense, but not cruel. They were the eyes of someone who had seen everything and survived. "My name is Kael'Vros," the man said, "and we need to talk." "About what?" "About why I'm really here." Kael'Vros pointed down into a valley below. "I've been tracking the Worm Queen for 3 days. She's the source of the pack's coordination. Kill her and the worms scatter. The researchers can escape safely. So why haven't you killed her yet?" "Because she's inside a volcanic cave system. The heat alone would kill most species within minutes. The toxic gases would kill them in seconds." Kael'Vros looked at Taman. "But humans can tolerate heat and toxins better than most aliens. Our evolution on Earth made us tough in ways the galaxy doesn't understand." "You want my help?" Taman realized. "No," Kael'Vros said. "I need your help. I can take the Queen alone, but my chances are maybe 50%. With 2 of us, those chances double. Why me? You could have asked any guild hunter." "Because guild hunters don't understand what hunting really is. They think it's about strength and weapons. But hunting is about patience, endurance, outlasting your prey. You ran for 6 hours without stopping. You led those worms exactly where I needed them. You understood without being told." Kael'Vros extended his hand. "You run like you have something to prove." "That's good. But you run like me." "That's better." Taman looked at the offered hand. Every logical part of his brain told him to refuse. He was exhausted. He was injured. He was not equipped for this fight. But he thought about the researchers in that bunker. About Hyejin, who would die if he didn't help. About Jiwoo, waiting on the station hoping her cousin would come home. About Vorath and the guild who had called him weak. He gripped Kael'Vros's hand and shook it firmly. "What's the plan?" Taman asked. Kael'Vros smiled, and it was the smile of a predator about to hunt. "The Worm Queen is territorial. She'll attack anything that enters her nest. We use that. We make her chase us through her own territory. Exhaust her like you exhausted the worms, then we strike when she's weak." "That's your plan? Make her angry and tired?" "It's worked for 40 years, Kael'Vros said. "Besides, you've already proven you can make things chase you. Now you just need to do it one more time." Taman looked down into the valley where smoke rose from volcanic vents. Somewhere down there, a creature waited that made shadow worms look like pets. "A queen, an apex predator. When do we start?" Taman asked. "Now," Kael'Vros said, putting his helmet back on. "The queen is most active at dawn." And dawn just arrived. They started down the cliff together, 2 humans walking into hell to hunt a monster. Behind them, the sun rose over Carvos Prime, painting the death world in shades of gold and red. Taman felt fear. Yes, but he also felt something else. Something that burned hotter than fear. He felt alive. This was what he had trained for. This was what he had dreamed of. The guild had called him weak. It was time to prove them wrong. The volcanic caves were worse than anything Taman had imagined. Heat radiated from the stone walls, making the air shimmer. Every breath felt like inhaling fire. Toxic gases leaked from cracks in the floor, forming green clouds that burned the eyes and throat. Kalvros moved forward confidently, his armor's systems filtering the worst of the toxins. Taman followed, covering his mouth with a cloth soaked in water. It helped, but not much. Already he felt dizzy, and they had only been inside for 5 minutes. Most aliens would be dead by now, Kalvros said, his voice calm despite the hell around them. Drashkor can't handle this heat. Quilvan lungs would collapse from the gases. Even the Thornax would crack in these conditions. So why can humans survive it? Taman asked, his words muffled by the cloth. Because Earth was a violent place, Kalvros replied. Volcanoes, toxic swamps, extreme temperatures. Our ancestors survived all of it. We're the cockroaches of the galaxy, Taman. We don't quit. We don't break. We just keep going. They moved deeper into the cave system. The passages twisted and turned, leading them down into the planet's crust. Taman saw bones scattered on the ground. Some were from worms. Others were from creatures he didn't recognize. All were picked clean. She's close, Kalvros whispered, stopping at a junction. Stay behind me. When I give the signal, run left. Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run. What's the signal? You'll know. They stepped into a massive chamber. The ceiling stretched 30 meters high. Lava flowed in rivers along the edges, providing the only light. In the center of the chamber, on a raised platform of stone, lay the Worm Queen. She was enormous. 4 times the size of the regular worms, with armor plating that looked thicker than spaceship hull. Her scales were black and red, reflecting the lava light. 6 legs, each the size of a tree trunk, a tail that ended in bony spikes, and her head, massive and angular with jaws that could swallow a human whole. The Queen's eyes opened. They glowed yellow in the darkness, fixing on the 2 intruders. Run, Kalvros shouted. That was the signal. Taman ran left as instructed. Behind him he heard an earth-shaking roar. The Queen was moving. The ground trembled with each step she took. Kalvros ran right, dividing her attention. The Queen's head swiveled between them, deciding who to chase first. She chose Taman. Of course she did. Taman sprinted through the cave tunnels, the Queen's massive form somehow squeezing through passages that seemed too small for her. Her claws scraped against stone. Her breath came in hot blasts that made the air even harder to breathe. But Taman had learned something from running from the worms. He zigzagged, making sharp turns that forced the Queen to slow down. He led her through tight spaces where her size was a disadvantage. He jumped over lava streams, making her find ways around. 20 minutes of running. 30. The Queen never stopped, never slowed. She was furious now, completely focused on killing this tiny creature that dared enter her domain. Then Kalvros appeared from a side tunnel, right in the Queen's path. He fired his weapon, small plasma bolts that struck the Queen's face. They didn't hurt her, but they got her attention. The Queen roared and turned toward Kalvros. Now he was running, and Taman was catching his breath. They played this game for over an hour, taking turns leading the Queen through her own nest. Each time one of them got tired, the other would draw her attention. Slowly, bit by bit, the Queen was getting slower. Her roars were becoming more labored. Even apex predators got tired. Now! Kalvros shouted. The platform. They ran back to the main chamber where they had first seen the Queen. The platform where she had been resting was surrounded by lava on 3 sides. There was only one way up. Taman and Kalvros climbed onto the platform and waited. The Queen came charging into the chamber, her rage making her careless. She saw them on her platform in her sacred space, and she attacked without thinking. She charged up the narrow path to the platform. Kalvros and Taman waited until she was almost on them. Then they split, jumping to opposite sides. The Queen's momentum carried her forward. She tried to stop, but her tired body couldn't respond fast enough. She slid on the smooth stone platform, her claws scrabbling for purchase. She went over the edge into the lava. The Queen's scream shook the entire cave system. She thrashed in the molten rock, her armor plating cracking from the intense heat. Even a creature as powerful as her couldn't survive that. Slowly, the Queen sank beneath the surface. Silence fell over the chamber. Is she dead? Taman asked. She's dead, Kalvros confirmed. They should have left then. They should have run. But Taman's exhaustion caught up with him. His legs gave out. He collapsed on the platform, his body finally refusing to move anymore. Kalvros knelt beside him. Can you walk? Give me a minute, Taman said. That's when the cave began to shake. The queen's thrashing had destabilized something. Rocks fell from the ceiling. The lava rivers began to overflow. No time for minutes, Calvros said. We need to leave now. But as they tried to stand, a section of the ceiling collapsed. A boulder the size of a car crashed down between them and the exit. They were trapped on the platform, surrounded by rising lava. Then Taemin noticed something. On the queen's platform there was another tunnel. It was small, barely large enough to crawl through. But it led up, away from the lava. There, he pointed. They crawled into the tunnel as lava consumed the platform behind them. The tunnel was hot, almost too hot to touch. Taemin's hands blistered as he pulled himself forward. Calvros was behind him, moving slower. The older man was finally showing his exhaustion. Keep going, Calvros said. Don't wait for me. Not a chance, Taemin replied. The tunnel was collapsing behind them. Taemin crawled faster, ignoring the pain. Ignoring everything except the need to move forward. Finally, he saw light ahead. An opening. He pulled himself out onto the jungle floor and immediately turned back to help Calvros. The older hunter's armor was damaged, cracked in several places. One of his arms was bleeding. Taemin grabbed Calvros and pulled him out just as the tunnel collapsed completely. They lay on the ground, gasping as explosions echoed from deep underground. The queen's nest was destroying itself. You should have left me, Calvros said quietly. That's not how humans work, Taemin replied. We're pack animals. We don't leave people behind. Calvros looked at him with something like respect. The guild called you weak. The guild was wrong. They rested for a few minutes, then started moving again. They needed to get back to the bunker, to the researchers. But Calvros was struggling. His injuries were worse than Taemin had realized. The older man's breathing was ragged. The queen got me, Calvros admitted, her tail spike. Right before we led her to the platform. There's venom in my bloodstream. How long do you have? Hours, maybe less. Taemin made a decision. He helped Calvros onto his back, carrying him in a fireman's hold. The older hunter protested, but Taemin ignored him. This was another thing humans were good at, carrying weight over long distances. You can't carry me for 15 kilometers, Calvros said. Watch me, Taemin replied. And he did. Through the jungle, over rough terrain with a full-grown man on his back, Taemin walked. One step at a time, one foot in front of the other. His muscles screamed. His back felt like it would break. But he didn't stop. Hours passed. The bunker came into view. Taemin stumbled up to the door and pounded on it with his last bit of strength. Help, he gasped. We need help. The door opened. Heejin's face appeared, shocked. What happened? Venom, Taemin said. He needs treatment now. They carried Calvros inside. Heijin immediately began working, using the research equipment to analyze the venom. Sangwoo helped, mixing compounds, trying to create an anti-venom. Taemin sat against the wall, watching them work. Calvros was pale now, his breathing shallow. The older hunter's hand reached out, grabbing Taemin's arm weakly. You carried me, Calvros said. His voice was barely a whisper. 6 kilometers. You carried me 6 kilometers. Closer to 7, Taemin said. The guild said humans were weak. The guild doesn't know what strength means. Calvros smiled. His hand moved to his neck, removing something. A token made of dark metal. He pressed it into Taemin's palm. This is my guild marker, Calvros said. It can't be refused. Take it. When you go back, show them. Tell them Calvros called you brother. You're going to be fine, Taemin said. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, you earned this. Calvros's eyes started to close. You didn't run from the worms. You made them chase you until they couldn't anymore. That's the human way. Heejin rushed over with a syringe. I've got something. It's crude, but it might work. She injected the anti-venom into Calvros's arm. They all waited, watching, hoping. Slowly, color returned to Calvros's face. His breathing steadied. He was going to survive. Taemin closed his eyes and finally let himself rest. Station Velkara's docking bay had never been so crowded. Word had spread impossibly fast. Calvros the Eternal had returned. Not just returned, but brought back from a death world, carried by a human the guild had rejected. Taemin walked down the cargo ship's ramp, supporting Calvros with one arm. The older hunter could walk now, but the venom had left him weak. Behind them came Heijin, Sangwoo, and Thex. The crowd parted as they walked. Aliens of every species stared. Whispers spread like wildfire. Timon saw shock on their faces, disbelief, and something else. Fear. Jiwoo pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around her cousin. Both women were crying. "You're alive," Jiwoo kept saying. "You're actually alive." Guildmaster Vorath stood at the front of the crowd, his scaled face unreadable. "Tae-min," he said slowly. "You stole a ship. You ignored direct guild orders. You undertook an unauthorized rescue mission." "Yes," Tae-min said simply. He was too tired to be diplomatic. "And you brought back survivors from Carvos Prime, a planet we deemed too dangerous to attempt rescue." "Yes." Vorath's eyes moved to Kael'vros. "And you claim this is Kael'vros the Eternal?" Before Tae-min could answer, Kael'vros straightened, pulling away from Tae-min's support. He stood on his own, his presence suddenly filling the docking bay. Even weakened, even injured, the legendary hunter commanded attention. "I am Kael'vros," he said. His voice carried across the silent crowd. "And I need to address the guild. Now." Vorath hesitated. "Your identity has never been confirmed. How do we know?" "Check your records," Kael'vros interrupted. "Hunter registration number 7739. Registered 40 standard years ago. Check the genetic markers. Check the contract histories. Or ask any of the guild masters from the old days who are still alive. They'll remember me." Vorath pulled out his datapad. His clawed fingers moved across the screen. His eyes widened. "The records match," he said quietly. "You are Kael'vros." "Then call a guild assembly," Kael'vros said. "What I have to say, everyone needs to hear." An hour later, the guild hall was packed. Every hunter on the station had come. They filled the seats, the aisles, the standing room in the back. Hunters who never agreed on anything all came to see the legend revealed. Tae-min stood at the side of the hall, trying to stay out of sight. But Kael'vros gestured for him to come forward. Reluctantly, Tae-min joined him at the center of the hall. Kael'vros reached up to his helmet. For 40 years, no one had seen his face. The galaxy's greatest hunter was a mystery, a ghost, a story told in whispers. Now, in front of hundreds of witnesses, he removed his helmet. The hall erupted in gasps, shouts, disbelief. Kael'vros was human. Unmistakably, obviously human. "Silence!" Vorath's voice boomed. The crowd quieted, but the shock remained. Kael'vros spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "For 40 years I have taken your impossible contracts. I have hunted on death worlds. I have killed creatures that your best teams couldn't touch. I have brought back trophies from planets that no one else would dare visit, and you never knew I was human." He paused, letting that sink in. "You rejected this man." Kael'vros pointed to Tae-min. "You called him weak, fragile. You said humans don't belong in the guild. But I am human, and I have been the most successful hunter in guild history." Vorath opened his mouth to speak, but Kael'vros continued. "This man ran for 6 hours through hostile terrain, leading shadow worms away from trapped researchers. He survived conditions that would kill most species. He fought beside me against the Worm Queen and lived. And when I fell to venom, he carried me 7 kilometers through a jungle that actively tries to kill anything that enters it." Kael'vros turned to face the crowd directly. "You test for strength, for speed, for things that look impressive in an arena, but you don't test for the things that matter. Endurance, adaptability, the refusal to quit. These are human traits. These are what make humans the best hunters in the galaxy." "That's one example," a voice called from the crowd. Tae-min saw it. Was Rexus, the Quilvan warrior who had mocked him days before. "One successful mission doesn't prove—" "One mission?" Kael'vros's laugh was cold. "I have completed 1,347 contracts, successfully, without failure, all while human, all while being the species you call weak." The number hung in the air like a physical thing. 1,347. No hunter in history had even half that many successful contracts. Kael'vros pulled something from his pocket. His guild marker, the token that identified him as a master hunter of the highest rank. He held it up for everyone to see. Then he handed it to Taemin. "This is my marker," Kael'vros said. "By guild law, I can pass it to anyone I deem worthy. I pass it to Taemin, not as student to teacher, but as equal to equal, as brother to brother." The hall exploded in argument. Hunters shouted, some in anger, some in support. Vorath tried to restore order. "This is unprecedented," Vorath said. "The council must deliberate." "There is no deliberation," Kael'vros interrupted. "Guild law is clear. My marker, my choice. Unless you want to change laws that have stood for 300 years. Vorath's jaw worked. He was trapped. Everyone knew it. If he accepted Taemin, he admitted the guild was wrong. If he refused, he challenged laws that were sacred to every hunter present. Finally, Vorath spoke. "The guild recognizes the transfer of marker 7739 to Taemin. He is hereby granted the rank of Master Hunter." It wasn't enthusiastic. It wasn't welcoming. But it was official. Taemin looked down at the marker in his hand. It was heavier than he expected. Not physically, but in meaning. This small piece of metal represented everything he had wanted, everything the guild had said he couldn't have. "I don't want to prove humans are better," Taemin said, surprising himself by speaking to the crowd. "I just want to prove we belong, that we deserve the same chance as anyone else." There was a moment of silence. Then, unexpectedly, Rexus stood. The big Quilvan walked down from the seats to stand in front of Taemin. "I mocked you," Rexus said. "I bet you wouldn't survive a day in the outer territories. I was wrong." He extended one of his 4 hands. "I would be honored to train beside you." Taemin shook the offered hand. One by one, other hunters stood. Not all of them, not even most of them. But enough. Enough to matter. Later in the cantina, Jiwoo bought drinks for everyone. Hyejin sat with Sangwoo and Thex, telling the story of their rescue to anyone who would listen. Hunters who had ignored Taemin days before now wanted to know about Carvos Prime. Taemin found Kael'vros sitting alone at a table by the window looking out at the stars. "Thank you," Taemin said, sitting down across from him. "Don't thank me," Kael'vros replied. "You earned that marker, every bit of it. What will you do now?" "Keep hunting, same as always." Kael'vros smiled. "But maybe not alone anymore. The galaxy knows I'm human now. That changes things." "Does it bother you? Being revealed?" "No," Kael'vros said thoughtfully. "It's actually freeing. I've been hiding for 40 years, proving myself over and over. Maybe it's time for other humans to have their chance." "The guild will still test people," Taemin said. "They'll still use the same physical trials." "Then we change the tests," Kael'vros said. "We show them what humans can really do, not just strength and speed, but endurance, strategy, adaptability. We make them understand that survival isn't about being the biggest or fastest. It's about refusing to quit. That could take years. I've got time. And now, so do you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Other hunters passed by, some nodding respectfully, others still skeptical. But the conversation had changed. The idea had been planted. Humans weren't weak. They were different, and different could be just as valuable as strong. 6 months later, Taemin stood in front of a mission board in the guild hall. His marker hung around his neck, no longer hidden. Beside him, Kael'vros studied the contracts. "What about this one?" Kael'vros pointed to a mission. "Leviathan in the Void Sector. No one's ever successfully hunted one." "Sounds perfect," Taemin said. They registered for the contract together. The system automatically logged them as a team. The Brothers, it called them. The name stuck. As they walked to their ship, Taemin noticed something. The guild had added a new testing category to their trials. It was called Endurance Assessment. The description mentioned long-distance challenges and stamina evaluation. "Progress," Kael'vros said, noticing where Taemin was looking. "Slow, but real." Their ship, which they had named Persistence, waited in the docking bay. Jiwoo had helped them modify it for long-range missions. Sangwoo had installed new environmental systems that could handle extreme conditions. As they prepared for departure, Taemin received a message on his communicator. It was from the guild. They were establishing a new division specifically for endurance-based hunting operations. They wanted Taemin to help design the training program. "They're actually listening," Taemin said, showing the message to Calvros. "Of course they are," Calvros replied. "You showed them something they couldn't ignore. Now they have to adapt or become irrelevant." They boarded the ship. Taemin took the pilot's seat. Calvros sat beside him as co-pilot. Before they launched, Calvros asked a question. "Ready for the long run?" Taemin smiled, remembering the first time he had run through Carvos Prime's jungle.